We're going live here with Miss Emily and Dr. P, and we're going to have a conversation. If you haven't heard or seen us before, shame on you, but we're going to have another conversation about awareness and awakening. I know I put on some of the tagline, a conversation about racism and understanding race, or understanding where you sit in racism, really, because it's not so much, is it a thing? Was it a thing? It is a thing. But where do you sit in it? Like, how are you with it? But before we get that, tell us about who you are, Miss Emily, so people can catch up and join your awakening and what you've been doing.
Sure. So it dawned on me in June of 2020, because of a dear friend and her openness and vulnerability, that there was a whole lot going on that I was completely ignorant to. And it simultaneously dawned on me that society made it very easy for me as a white woman to remain blissfully ignorant to those things. And that if I wanted to be not ignorant, I was going to have to take the initiative and do something about it. So that began a personal journey that then I extended to some friends through our local Rotary, and that became a more formalized program that now I'm offering to executives. We just met, our first cohort had our second meeting yesterday, and I will tell you, Dr. P, you haven't introduced yourself that way in any of our other conversations. Are you evolving?
I think
Anyway,
so. I'm
don't
just
mean to derail us, but I wanted to let you know yesterday, my goodness, we've got COO, VPs of this and that, in this group with me. And the conversation was around, what did you see that you hadn't known to look for? So we'd read things, we'd watched TED Talks, we had, this shared experience coming into the time. What did you see? What were you surprised by? What was new? And then how does that play out? Like, what does that mean for you? What are you seeing in your organization differently because of what you've now seen? And then what's one thing that you're going to do in the next month? And so we'll be together for 6 months. So that, what are you going to do? We'll hear the story next month, how it went. It was incredibly powerful. I got off of that call thinking, oh my goodness, I've landed on something, and I really can't take credit for it. It was me recognizing that the effort I was going through for myself back 18 months ago was something that likely many folks would want to do, but they just didn't have the time, bandwidth, experience for how to do that digging for themselves. But if they could ride along on the wave, they would. And man alive, is my hypothesis proven true. So, I won't share details necessarily unless they come to mind from that conversation yesterday on this call. But just for anybody who's listening, it's my side gig, but it's the one that I'm the most passionate about at the moment. I'm just trying to move a conversation forward that needs to be had.
I want to play a clip, and I'm not even sure if you've seen it, and I'm going to share it with everyone. Let's get right to it. Can you see the screen?
Treats our citizens, our Black citizens.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who this is?
Jane Elliott. There she is.
There she is, live in audio.
Citizens. If you, as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our Black citizens do in this society, please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way Blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
And I have asked those questions. Oh, hold on.
Get moved on to the next.
Hold on.
Friday morning surprise.
I apologize if you heard that, but it was supposed to be stop sharing. Okay, sorry about that. Audio glitch. But I've asked that question to white friends of mine, and they were taken back, and the answer is just flat out no.
Oh, yeah.
There'd be just no way I would want to go through. But then again, the people I asked also said no one should go through that.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's helping.
Mm.
I'm not sure if just it's helping that people are aware of where they fit or where they sit. Because where you sit isn't just where you fit, it's where you are at the time, because you can always move in a different spot and be different and act different. But if you're in that spot, what are you doing in that spot once you become aware? And I was thinking about when people are starting to be awakened and kind and compassionate, Black people are still going to be afraid. There are going to be such skepticism, like they're being lured into a trap, that they can't even accept the kindness of a white person because they are so afraid of what has happened, what they've had to do, that their heart is so encaged, so chained up, that anybody's true kindness may repel them. And that's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought. Do you mind if I kind of turn and be the questioner? Because I
Yeah.
really love to understand from your perspective. So when you share what you just did about there are many Black people who would, I'm curious if you've personally experienced that or felt that or seen that or, creep up where you were unaware that you were feeling this locked upness around a white individual who was extending empathy or kindness to you, and then all of a sudden you became aware. Like what was that process, or how did
So,
that
so I have to thank my mom, and just thinking about my mom and the things she taught me, and my mentor, the, the love she was and who she was and how she taught me. I don't get locked up. What I do get is a release. My mother, in the better part of the term, being a Black Panther, married, she was part of that movement of let's embrace and let's move forward, but let's do for you.
Hmm.
So accept kindness, my mother said. You have to, if you don't accept kindness, then you can only give hate. If you're unable to accept kindness for what kindness is, then that's how much hatred you have within you. So I would try to practice not having hate by accepting kindness from whomever, because I can talk to whomever in kindness, and people be like, "Why are you talking to that person?" Because we were in a shared space. Well, you don't know them. You know what they could do to you? No, I'm not unaware of oblivious of what could happen, but I don't choose it to happen. But am I prepared if it happens? The answer is yes, yes, yes.
Hmm.
So
So your comment then was more about what what you're representing as what you see as the norm.
yeah, yeah, because a lot of many Blacks are afraid of the "I got you," right? Boo Boo the Fool is the other comment. I'm not going to be Boo Boo the Fool. And Boo Boo the Fool came around in the 70s, where white people would do something, all of a sudden they find themselves, underneath something or engaged in something, or, hey, I'm going to be your friend. And all of a sudden I tell on you and you get locked up. So it's all this "I got you" game, and they don't want to feel like they want to play the "I got you" game. I'm just going to have to be, and so off the air, people. So thank everyone for listening to our conversation. But off the air, I was telling Emily, when we come close to death, your ideology changes, your heart changes to learn to see the living instead of running away from the dead. I'm going to run towards the light in everybody, whether you think you have light inside of you or not. I'm going to seek that out, because that's this place I want to sit in. Now, if you change and want to harm me, I can protect myself emotionally and spiritually. We're not even talking about the physical stuff, but emotionally and spiritually, I've learned to protect myself so I can heal from being wounded or to escape from being trying to be damaged. But
But
I'm not, yeah,
you won't be the victim.
right.
Yeah. Though, back to you sharing that, there's a general sense
Mhm.
of skepticism toward white kindness. The more I try so hard to put myself in my Black friend's shoes, the more that resonates. I think I would have the same. So I do think that there's still more when you and I talk about a conversation that needs to be had that isn't being had. There's so many. On the one hand, it's very simple.
Mm.
The very simple acknowledgement of a reality where this came to mind actually. Tell me what you think of it. If I draw a 6, and I don't have my props ready for me here, but if I draw a 6 on a piece of paper and I'm looking at it, I'll swear up and down it's a 6. If I turn it to you, what are you going to see? I mean,
The
anybody
backwards
who's,
nine.
it's
Yeah,
a 9. Anybody who's played Uno with their kid knows you
right.
can't figure out which is a 6 or a 9. You're looking for the little line, right? So you're going to tell me, dag nabbit, Emily, it's a 9. I'm swearing to you, it's a 9 because of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm going to pull it up and look at it and say, no, it's a 6. And I don't think that conversation gets anywhere
No,
where I'm sitting where I'm sitting, looking at it.
right.
You're sitting where you're sitting. Somehow in our awareness and in our vocabulary and in our positioning of our mind and
Hmm.
talking and looking at this, we have to get out of our position. And that's a very mature thing to do. And frankly, there are a lot of adults who are not there yet. And
Right.
there's a lot of life going on for everyone. Babies are being born, parents are dying, work is being upset, so, and not to mention it's so ingrained into our society that the maturity to be able to remove yourself from that, to be able to reposition, I mean, I think that's a significant piece. We can't assume
No.
that everybody's there. My mentor and best friend, who passed away this year, was an expert. He was a national leader in his field, and he was an expert at speaking the language of the echo chamber to whom he was talking to, and then nudging them a little bit to help them, break out of that. I don't, incredible to watch, painfully slow in getting the outcome. And me personally, I'm a drive to get it done on predictive index, off the charts, action oriented individual, right? So I don't have the patience for that. But on the other hand, I see the wisdom because the slow drip method of constantly or steady hand on the tiller, however you want to look at it, I think is what needs to happen. I likely am becoming annoying to many of my immediate circles because this conversation is always playing out, is always at the tip of my tongue. My immediate family, there are members who have resisted it until very recently, and others who have, who have embraced kind of going there with me. My family of origin would prefer not to engage me on it at all, but I'm continuing, to push. And when I say push, it's not because I want to convince anyone
Right.
of anything.
Right.
It's because I want to share with them myself.
Yep.
This is something that is, awakening in me that I'm seeing for the first time, and it's hurting me, it's motivating me to action, it's changing the trajectory of some of my professional vision for what I want to do. It's having this huge, and I want to share that with you. And I want to help you see what I'm seeing. Do with it what you want, but I'm not going to stop telling you, what I'm seeing. So that was a stream of consciousness. I think, though, that when we talk about a conversation that needs to be happening that isn't happening, there's fear all over the place on both sides. And there's the need to cultivate an ability to do that seat shift. And if we can figure that out, I think we'll be making progress, and at scale, right? That this is not just you and me. This is not just in the little cohorts I can pull together.
Right.
That this is now a cultural norm where social justice isn't just the activity of a few.
So
it's a national conversation.
When you said we have to change some definitions or some words, I agree with that, because there are certain things in place that people have said that is almost like a staple for. Like, for instance, if they do it once, they'll do it again. I think that has to be removed, because we're unable to move forward if that's one of those sayings people actually adhere to. If it's a spouse, or if they treat you wrong once, they'll do it again. They're just showing you their true colors or spots or whatever, right? A tiger can't change his stripes. Those sayings are more prominent than let go, live, be kind. No, because what happens if a person steals from you, they're most likely to steal from you. If they lie to you, they'll lie to you again. It's so, if we have that illuminating in our background, and that keeps reverberating in those sayings, then it will be hard to move forward as a human race, because I don't believe those to be true.
Other words, privilege.
Yeah.
It means different things. It's a 6 and a 9.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with my dad driving me and my brother to school in a little Datsun pickup truck, where I straddled the stick shift, and it was so rusty I could see the road between my legs as I looked down. I wouldn't consider that privileged prior to my understanding.
Right.
That has been emerging, right? Because a white person hears the word privilege and all they can think of is economics.
Right.
That's all that it's a 6.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea that just being able to be normal and not think twice about the fact that you're normal. Did you see the picture that got thrown around social media this week of the gentleman who's drawing anatomical images for the first time? So, when you're pregnant and you see a fetus inside, and all the books, that you read when you're pregnant, they show here's the stage that your baby's at. It's always a white woman. So he's drawing black bodies. So when in anatomy class, you're studying the lungs. Now there's a black set of shoulders with the lungs. It's striking. Everyone who's commenting on this is saying, I never noticed that I didn't notice the fact that it was always white. That's how deep this thing goes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so the
absolutely.
privilege, if we redefine that word, is that as a white person, I live in a world where what's normal is me.
Yes.
Not to mention all of the dangers that I don't have to worry about on a daily basis that others do. So a member of our group yesterday shared with everyone else, a friend invited her, she's Black. A friend invited her to an event at our house that was out in the woods in the country, and the end time was after dark. And she thought long and hard about it, but opted out because she didn't know that area. She didn't know what the police might do, etc. The privilege is that I never have to give that
a thought.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that? That's what. So privilege is a word that is almost useless, because it doesn't move the conversation forward. It's someone looking at a 6 and it's someone looking at a 9. Social justice gets a little closer, or just injustice. Let's not call it social, just justice versus injustice. That gets a little closer to it. But sometimes I think our new vocabulary is going to come not because we redefined terms from a top down, like we re-engineered and re-architected it, but because enough people were choosing to look to see what is it like in the life of the nine.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the vocabulary falls in place.
I share with you a monologue of something I did of am I a black man? Am I a man, actually? But it's about perspective of a black man's view. Let's talk about that. Tell me what you thought of it. I know you liked it. People, we do know we talk, people. So it's not like, but we want to talk about this, but you had some thoughts. We have not talked about.
Yeah. So your voice was low on the recording, which contributed to my sense of being let in to something very personal. And so for everyone who hasn't heard this, what Dr. P, I'll call you that now, did was, as he said, sort of this monologue asking a lot of questions. And the questions that you are asking were so self-reflective / societal reflective in your place in it and its nature and how that influences you, that again, it was that like being let inside, someone else's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I jotted down some things. Am I being pieced together like a puzzle that was never meant for me? So am I a man? Am I a black man? What does it mean? I don't know that you asked what does it mean, but that was inferred.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I being pieced together like a puzzle that was never meant for me? In other words, is it even possible? How do I be me here?
Right. And I talked about this to some black men called the Mr. Potato Head theory, that we try to piece together the perfect black man that we need to be so we can be able to play with the other toys. We got to have the perfect nose, the perfect mouth, the perfect ears, and then I can play with the other toys. But those pieces are Thurgood Marshall hat, Frederick Douglass's lips and Martin Luther King's ears. And we're supposed to have all these pieces put together and be like, now that's a black guy I can talk to. But that's an impossible format to ever live up to.
Another one that you said, are my hands too large, too strong, too black? Many women struggle with, am I too much? Because, we haven't historically been seen as leaders or as people of influence in communities and in organizations. And so for those of us who are naturally wired that way, it can feel like, do I really belong here? Even though clearly the impact that I'm having is significant and makes it me worth. But am I really worth? Do I belong? Am I worth it? That perspective on steroids is what I felt coming, from you. Are my hands? I mean, that's your will,
right?
If we think of our body in terms of the wholeness of us, your hands are your will. That's how you be in the world and do and assert.
That's how you engage. It's how you hug. That's how you greet. Yeah. Yeah.
Am I too large? Am I too strong? Am I too black? It made me think of the rap by Dave, Black is Beautiful, Black is Excellent. I don't know if you've heard that one, but I wanted to grab your hands and say, no, they're not. Use them. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. I have more, but I do. Wanted to comment on that.
But it is, and to get that understanding that's how we enter the world, is we enter the world with our hands, right? With who we reach out to. Even if our hands are by our sides, we reach out to you, and that's what we are giving. And sometimes that reach can be overbearing depending on the 6 or the 9.
Yep.
Right. before I greet a woman who is I want to say something to. I got to make sure I make myself small, and I don't want to her to be afraid of the big black guy who's going to whoa, and or her to clutch her purse. And I'm thinking of those things. So yeah.
Constantly thinking of those things, and I can't imagine the exhaustion that can come. I mean, that's maybe you and I offline sometimes should like make a list of the exhausting things that are Black existence, right?
Yeah.
The tiny things, the death by a thousand cuts. Here's one that I wanted to ask you, maybe a little, if you don't mind, and if you want to
No.
pass, that's fine. But you were saying, do I know who my children are?
Mm-hmm.
Am I allowed to see my child? Because your child is this beautiful human,
Mm-hmm.
but in this fish pool bowl that is counter to their humanity. How does that, am I allowed to, I mean, it goes beyond words. I think I get the sense of what you were wrestling with there. That's deep.
Mm-hmm. It it makes me cry thinking about it, because from so many different aspects, if I was to yell at my child in the store, I would get arrested. If my child was taken away from me because the court believed I did something, or the accusation caused something, so now the child is taken away. So, or I'm a person who the child was taken away, and now I have to fight to even see my child through a court system that doesn't see me as being human, but sees me as a threat. So I have to struggle with that. Like, I'm not a threat. And that's why I think it goes on to the piece. I'm good. I can make things for you. I could do things. I I'm really kind. You know, I have to beg for you to see my kindness and that I'm gifted. And 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 I can make money, but I've never learned money. So I have to give it back because the society says it doesn't belong in your pocket. It belongs over here. So yeah.
I also though wonder if there isn't an element to am I allowed to see my child that is coming from what I'm starting to appreciate is this, I mean, code switching is the word,
Yeah.
but this how you present, you have how you present in your family, you have how you present in order to be accepted in society.
Mhm.
Your child has that, the complication around who am I and
Right.
how do I show up,
Mhm.
and how that influences even, your family, the tightest relationships that we're supposed to be able to have, like without that added complication. Um, anyway, that's kind of where my mind went beyond even, some of the legal system things that you were referencing.
I'm going to be very appreciative to say that you listened to it. You were understanding, because it's like looking at a painting. We can
Mhm.
look at many paintings and get so much from it. And we keep looking at the painting, we get so much from it. That was so much emotional monologue about how a black man feels every day, how I feel every day. Not even if it's not about anybody else, and a black person can be here like that ain't me. It
Right.
was about how I feel every day. So,
The
and
way you
expressing that.
ended, the way you ended it, and maybe it wasn't the end, but toward the end, am I able to love
Yeah.
in this environment that we've created or inherited? Am I even able to love? Am I able to love another? Am I able to love you? And I hear the you being a white person, a black person, you know,
Right.
any person.
Any person.
You know, am I allowed to love? And then the last one was, until I understand the questions, I'll never have myself or
No.
you. I'll never have me or you until I understand those deep questions. So, you know, a friend of mine recommended a book that a friend of his actually authored. And I struggled to get through it until I got to the end. It was, it all came clear of, oh, I see now where this trajectory of this narrative was going. But I came back to my friend and said, I don't get it, you know, like halfway through, what do you see in this? And he said, well, for me, it's the expression of a curious Black man in America. Inquisitive, that was the word, not curious. Inquisitive Black man in America. And that struck me because it painted the whole narrative differently. It painted it as an attempt to ask and answer some of those deep, deep questions that you had in your monologue that no human should have to wrestle with.
No, no human should have to. Many women do. Many Black men do. The few people who don't is white men. I'm almost curious if they could actually sit down. What have they ever wrestled with besides awareness and awakening? And that's something that just takes into perspective. They could literally change on a dime. But they really don't have to. Not really. No, not at all. No, not at all. You know, but a woman does. Every other culture does, except for a white male person. They never have to struggle with anything unless they choose to have introspective and choose to have compassion for others.
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice, but they don't really have to.
Right.
Like you said, women have to be like, I want to be a CEO of a company. And all these men are going to be like, well, okay, well, who let her in, right? Like, why can't I be here? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I own my own company. This is what we do, right? You know,
it goes against the norm. Yeah.
Yep.
Norms, you know, it's funny. I have titles of books that I've read where I don't remember much about the book, but the title sticks out in my head. Norms and Nobility was a part of a canon of, you know, Western. Like, the more I'm realizing, you know, some of the great books that I have been taught to cherish, and coming out of an education that didn't look at any of that. And now all of a sudden I'm an inquisitive, you know, mother of young children, and I'm seeing that there's more to education than just unscrew the lid, dump the information in and screw it back on. And so, you know, and, you know, getting into the classics.
right.
Well, now through my Black friends' eyes, seeing that the classics omit
Yep.
omit any Black authors or Black perspectives or a recognition. I'll tell you, this is going longer, but this is my last thing. The biggest epiphany was when I shared one of my favorite little clips from The Little Prince with a friend. And he came back and like just raged on it. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And it was something that I'd held so dear and, you know, held up as a piece of wisdom. And, but I saw through his eyes how he could have that. I saw the 9, even though I'd always seen the 6.
Because it was upsetting.
So I took it a step further. You'd be proud of me. I took it a step further and I said, all right, Alexander Solzhenitsyn gave a speech to Harvard in 1978 that when I was first shepherding my, you know, first grader into a classical school and the parents were reading together, this was something that we read, and it was upheld as, you know, a really thought-provoking, interesting piece where here you have this guy coming out of communist USSR, you know, defecting out of the gulag. And he's now giving a speech to Harvard graduates, critiquing the West through the eyes of the East in that era. And nowhere in his critique is there any mention of chattel slavery emerging for the first time, of the, you know, the economic foundation that the West or the United States was built on, well, even all of this hemisphere was built on, nowhere is there any mention. So I'm reading it through the eyes that I had just been given to look at the Little Prince, and I'm reading this and I'm thinking, if I grew up a Black individual with a classical education of the Western civilization, what would I feel? Invisible,
Yep.
worthless,
Yep.
not valued, not recognized. Holy smokes, that hit me to the core. And it's that kind of thing that I think helps us get around into another.
Look at the subtleties. We're about ready to take off here because we like to keep this short and have another conversation later. But the map, most people don't even think about the map, but the map is scaled wrong. Africa is the largest continent on the whole map. But if you look at the map, the way it has, it looks like Europe and the USSR and Russia takes up the whole northern part of the thing. But the distances are all wrong.
If you actually Google, there's a really cool map that puts the rest of the world in Africa. Every other country fits in Africa. You see the United States,
Wow.
one little thing, you see it's a cool one, Google it.
But that's how big Africa is. But if you look at it, they're not going to depict that because they don't want Africa to be that big in your mind, right? Also, another thing, in the 70s, think about the 70s in Vietnam, the Black man's hair was ruled against the law in the military as an afro. You couldn't wear an afro. But if a Black person's nappy hair grows anything, it grows into a natural afro. So they would get penalized for wearing their hair in a quote afro. So they couldn't even grow their own hair without being saying you can't
for being
right.
yourself.
Yeah, right. But a white person can grow their hair whatever how long, and it's not an afro, but the Africans, Blacks couldn't grow an afro.
Someone that I'm very close to said not too long ago, yeah, Emily, okay, some of the systemic stuff, there might be something to it, but I just don't think it needs to be shoved down our throats.
Okay.
And my response was, people are dying and people are unable to live outside of trauma. If we don't choose to look at it, I don't want to shove anything down your throat, but if we don't choose to look at it, are you okay with the fact that people are dying and living in constant trauma?
But she said yes by saying what she said.
It was a he.
Well, he said yes by saying what he said. Because when they say yes, when people say words, they're saying yes to. That's the other thing. Maybe if they don't understand, if they're saying, really, we need to hear this, they're saying yes to it.
That was not the spirit that was coming from the individual, but I love your generosity.
Anything you want to say before we go on, take on this? I want people to don't commit suicide. People are always not with families during the holidays or the New Year's. It's not always a time for celebration. Even Hanukkah remembers what they have been through and how they escaped from slavery, and now they're free. So if you want to cherish anything in this holidays, escape from slavery to be free. And your slavery could be mentally, could be emotionally, and it could be spiritually, it could be physical. So work on your escaping your internal and external slavery, and then you can celebrate.
Freedom comes from watching, noticing, and then really sinking into your inner core to see what's going on there. And I know you and I kind of share that. So this is going to be a rough holiday for me too. But freedom comes from acknowledging reality.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So we can find rest there. So for anybody else, maybe that helps.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Enjoy the rest of your day.